Welcome to the last lecture of the semester. I'm so excited we made it this far. Thanks for sticking with me. We're all tired. So I thought that I would uh, compile all of the fun prompts that make neuroethics so fascinating and spend most of the lecture on that. And then the last third will be all of the content stuff that the questions are about. So let's go through some prompts. Actually, first, remember everything we talked about in this class. Most things come back here, right? Even mental architectures are going to come back here because of questions of modularity. Biases are going to be relevant. Everything is relevant here. So, okay, I'm going to give you a bunch of prompts in a row, and maybe during class time we'll discuss some of these. But think about them on your own. Okay. Number 1, enemy soldiers have taken over your village. They have orders to kill all remaining civilians. You and some of your townspeople have sought refuge in the cellar of a large house. Outside, you hear the voices of soldiers who have come to search the house for valuables. Your baby begins to cry loudly. You cover his mouth to block the sound. If you remove your hand from his mouth, his crying will summon the attention of the soldiers who will kill you, your child, and the others hiding out in the cellar. To save yourself and the others, you must smother your child to death. Is it appropriate for you to smother your child in order to save yourself and the other townspeople? So in each of these prompts, I'm going to put the results from a study. This is from Green et al., but there's going to be some from other studies, information you can find online. And I'll put a link to it where it'll tell you of the participants that were asked, how many said yes, how many went with the utilitarian judgment, which is basically the best for the most at the expense of the fewest. Here, the average response time was 5.5 seconds, 5.65 seconds. And I'll include that in all of these prompts as well. 2, sacrifice. You, your husband, and your 4 children are crossing a mountain range on your return journey to your homeland. You have inadvertently set up camp on a local clan's sacred burial ground. The leader of the clan says that according to local laws, you and your family must be put to death. However, he will let yourself, your husband, and your 3 other children live if you yourself will kill your oldest son. Is it appropriate for you to kill your oldest son in order to save your husband and your other 3 children? 82% of people said yes. It took them a little less than 7 seconds to get to that. 3, submarine. You are the captain of a military submarine traveling underneath a large iceberg. An onboard explosion has caused you to lose most of your oxygen supply and has injured one of your crew who is quickly losing blood. The injured crew member is going to die from his wounds no matter what happens. The remaining oxygen is not sufficient for the entire crew to make it to the surface. The only way to save the other crew members is to shoot dead the injured crew member so that there will be just enough oxygen for the rest of the crew to survive. Is it appropriate for you to kill the fatally injured crew member in order to save the lives of the remaining crew members? 9 out of 10 people said yes. It took them less than 6 seconds to get to it. Architect. You are a young architect visiting one of your construction sites with your boss. Your boss is a despicable individual who makes everyone around him miserable. Okay, this animation needs to stop. It occurs to you that if you were to push him off the building you're inspecting, he would fall to his death and everyone would think it was an accident. Is it appropriate for you to push your boss off the building? Thank you. In order to get him out of your life? Only 1 in 100 people said yes. It took a little more than 4 seconds to get to it. You are the head of a poor household in a developing country. Your crops have failed for the 2nd year in a row, and it appears that you have no way to feed your family. Your sons Ages 8 and 10 are too young to go out to the city where there are jobs, but your daughter could fare better. Again, these prompts are troubling. I think this one's from Green et al. Uh, yeah. You know a man from your village who lives in the city and who makes sexually explicit films featuring small children, such as your daughter. He tells you that in 1 year of working in his studio, your daughter could earn enough money to keep your family fed for several growing seasons. Is it appropriate for you to employ your daughter in the child pornography industry in order to feed your family? 1 in 11 people said yes. It took them 4 seconds to get to it, or five and a little more than 5 seconds to get to it. You are 15 infanticide. Again, Jesus. A 15-year-old girl who has become pregnant. By wearing loose clothing and deliberately putting on weight, you have managed to keep your pregnancy a secret. One day, while at school, your water breaks. You run to the girls' locker room and hide for several hours while you deliver the baby. You are sure that you are not prepared to care for this baby. You think to yourself that it would be such a relief to simply clean up the mess you've made in the locker room, wrap the baby in some towels, throw the baby in the dumpster behind the school, and act as if nothing had ever happened. Is it appropriate for you to throw the baby in the dumpster in order to move on with your life? 1 in 20 people said yes. It took less than 3 seconds to get to it. And I remember I cut out some that were troubling too. Some that were more troubling. Okay. In the future, you are a veteran of a war during which both of your eyes were destroyed. Due to recent medical advances, it is now possible to perform eye transplants, but much to your anger and amazement, there are no willing donors. A sympathetic black market surgeon offers to help you. If you hire him, he and his associates will kidnap a randomly selected stranger, carve out one of his eyes, and transfer it to you. Is it appropriate for you to hire this surgeon to carve out the stranger's eye in order to help restore your vision? 3 in 100 people said yes. It took about 5 seconds to get to it. Only 29 out of 30 people wouldn't do this, I guess. That's good. You are a doctor. You have 5 patients, each of whom is about to die due to a failing organ of some kind. You have another patient who is healthy. The only way that you can save the lives of the first 5 patients is to transplant 5 of this young man's organs against his will into the bodies of the other 5 patients. If you do this, the young man will die, but the other 5 patients will live. Is it appropriate for you to perform this transplant in order to save 5 of your patients? 1 in 8 or 9 people said yes in about 3 seconds. You are at home one day when the mail arrives. You receive a letter from a reputable international aid organization. The letter asks you to make a donation of $200 to their organization. The letter explains that a $200 donation will allow this organization to provide needed medical attention to some poor people in another part of the world. Is it appropriate for you to not make a donation to this organization in order to save money? 3 out of 5 people said yes. Less than 5 seconds. Okay. Some of those are troubling. Let's do more prompts. These get worse. You are a member of a government legislature. The legislature is deciding between 2 different policies concerning environmental hazards. Policy A has a 90% chance of causing no deaths at all, and a 10% chance of causing 1,000 deaths. Policy B has a 92% chance of causing no deaths, and an 8% chance of causing 10,000 deaths. Is it appropriate for you to vote for policy A over policy B? 3 out of 4 people said yes. 2 seconds. All right, policy B. Is it appropriate for you to vote for policy B over policy A? 1 in 4 said yes. 3.5 seconds. The policy A now has a 90% chance of causing no deaths at all and a 10% chance of causing 1,000 deaths, same. Policy B has an 88% chance of causing no deaths and 12% chance of causing 10 deaths. Is it appropriate for you to vote for policy A over policy B? Yeah, those are different. Most people said no. These are troubling because you have to deal with policy. 5 for 7 trolley. You're at the wheel of a runaway trolley quickly approaching a fork in the tracks. On the tracks extending to the left is a group of 5 railway workmen. On the tracks extending to the right is a group of 7 railway workmen. If you do nothing, the trolley will proceed to the left, causing the deaths of the 5 workmen. The only way to save these workmen is to hit a switch on your dashboard that will cause the trolley to proceed to the right, causing the deaths of the 7 workmen on the other side. Is it appropriate for you to hit the switch in order to avoid the deaths of the 5 workmen? 1 in 20 people said yes. 4.5 seconds. I wonder if the math, or maybe they know the 5 workmen. I don't know. Footbridge. A runaway trolley is headed down the tracks toward 5 workmen who will be killed if the trolley proceeds. You are on the footbridge over the tracks in between the approaching trolley and the 5 workmen. Next to you on this footbridge is a stranger who happens to be very large. The only way to save the lives of the 5 workmen is to push the stranger off the bridge and onto the tracks below, where his large body will stop the trolley. The stranger will die if you do this, but the 5 workmen will be saved. Is it appropriate for you to push the stranger onto the tracks in order to save the 5 workmen? So here, 1 in 5 people said yes. Took about 4 seconds to get to that conclusion. While on vacation on a remote island, you are fishing from a seaside dock. You observe a group of tourists board a small boat and set sail for a nearby island. Soon after their departure, you hear over the radio that there is a violent storm brewing, a storm that is sure to intercept them. The only way you can ensure their safety is to warn them by borrowing a nearby speedboat. The speedboat belongs to a miserly tycoon who would not take kindly to you borrowing his property. Is it appropriate for you to borrow the speedboat in order to warn the tourist about the storm? Nearly everybody said yes. Took less than 5 seconds to get there. You are the owner of a small business trying to make ends meet. It occurs to you that you could lower your taxes by pretending some of your personal expenses are business expenses. For example, you could pretend that the stereo in your bedroom is being used in the lounge at the office, or that your dinners out with your wife are dinners with clients. Is it appropriate for you to pretend that certain personal expenses are business expenses in order to lower your taxes? 1 in 4 said yes. It's less than 6 seconds. You work for the Bureau of Health, a government agency. You're deciding whether or not your agency should encourage the use of a certain recently developed vaccine. The vast majority of people who take the vaccine develop an immunity to a certain deadly disease, but a very small number of people who take the vaccine will actually get the disease that the vaccine is designed to prevent. All the available evidence, which is very strong, suggests that the chances of getting the disease due to lack of vaccination are much higher than the chance of getting the disease by taking the vaccination. Is it appropriate for you to direct your agency to encourage the use of this vaccine in order to promote national health? About 85. Okay, so about 17 out of 20 people said yes. More than 6 seconds. Lastly, a viral epidemic has spread across the globe, killing millions of people. You have developed 2 substances in your home laboratory. You know that one of them is a vaccine, but you don't know which one. You also know that the other one is deadly. Once you figure out which substance is the vaccine, you can use it to save millions of lives. You have with you 2 people who are under your care, and the only way to identify the vaccine is to inject each of these people with one of the substances. One person will live, the other will die, and you'll be able to start saving the lives with your vaccine. Is it appropriate for you to kill one of these people with a deadly injection in order to identify a vaccine that will save millions of lives? 4 out of 5 people said yes. More than 7 seconds. All right, what's going on here? So we did a bunch of prompts. Some of them were personal. You had to like do the actions yourself. Some of them were impersonal. Some of them involved violence or something that was immediately salient and threatening. Others were a little bit more indirect. It turns out that there's quite a bit of difference between people's responses to this, both individually and in different circumstances. So the utilitarian judgment, utilitarianism, is the view of doing the best for the most. And so, for example, in that final case of giving an injection, that final ridiculously contrived case of giving an injection to a person that will kill them in order to potentially save millions more, that doing that would be a utilitarian choice. Deciding not to do that because it is better to not actively bring harm into the world, even if it has the side effect of allowing more harm to come into the world, is a not utilitarian judgment. It turns out that it is harder, it takes longer to come to utilitarian conclusions the more you're asked to try to remember and think about it. So if I ask you to remember 6 digits or 10 digits versus, just remember 1 digit, you're more likely to take longer to come to the utilitarian conclusion. It also turns out that the areas that activate when you ask patients these questions in fMRI machines, the areas that activate depend on the kinds of questions that are asked. So if you give personal moral dilemmas, like you are the one that has to, actively kill somebody, the medial frontal gyrus and the posterior cingulate gyrus, the superior temporal sulcus, and the inferior parietal lobe all show activation. On the other hand, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the other parts of the parietal lobe show activation under impersonal moral dilemmas. These are going to be also ones that slow down under cognitive load. So consider the footbridge and the switch scenario. So both of these involve a runaway trolley. In one of them, you have to flip the switch, and there's variations. I gave you the one where you could either save 5 or kill 7, but there's ones where you save 5 or kill 1. There's a variety of them. But the utilitarian judgments are more likely to be, you're more likely to come to utilitarian conclusions, that is, to save the many at the expense of the one, when it's a non-emotional situation, when you're not asked to push a person onto the tracks. If you change the scenario so that you have to like imagine being right next to the person that's about to die, it also has that effect. All right. So that's weird. It's weird that we have these various prompts that, per the last class, some of them we ran out of reasons to come to these conclusions, and yet we came to them anyway. We were morally dumbfounded. And now in this class, we look at some evidence, we look at some research that shows that um, for some of these prompts, reason isn't involved much at all. And in fact, um, some of these are very emotionally salient. When you're talking about intentionally causing harm, it triggers different portions of your mind, more emotional centers, than when it's an accidental. So what does that mean? It might mean that morality isn't what we think it is, and that philosophers that have been trying to look for grand unified theories of morality might be barking up the wrong tree. Maybe there's lots of different aspects to morality. Reasoned versus emotional judgments, and maybe something else, or maybe combinations of these. We also saw that they varied culturally and individually, and cognitive load seemed to have quite a bit of an effect on reasoned judgments, that is, utilitarian type judgments, and not so much on emotional judgments. So people did not come to utilitarian conclusions after thinking about pushing a person off a bridge. They had to like work themselves into it if they ever did change their mind. But if you're just doing the math, emotion actually doesn't come into play at all. So maybe one big lesson from all of this, and in fact, maybe that's one of the lessons from a lot of the study of cognitive science, is that these variations suggest that some of the things that we thought were unified or that we thought we understood, like memory, perception, concepts, morality, emotions, senses, etc., are not actually unified at all. They vary quite a bit, and they have predictable problems, predictable divisions, predictable biases. And perhaps those are important to study and to know about so that we don't mistake ourselves as being maximally rational and like computers that walk around. We are much simpler and much more complex than that, it turns out. That's the end of this class. That's the end of the semester with respect to content. Thanks for sticking with me. You guys are great.